Every writer knows that the best conversations about writing don't happen in classrooms or symposia or any other fancy artisanal setting. They happen at the bar, usually after deadline. That's the vibe we're going for here. This is The Other 51, conversations with writers about writing. I'm Brian Moritz. Today's guest is Stephen Cohen from the Seattle Post-Intelligencer. Stephen Cohen, welcome to The Other 51. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, this is it's turning into quite a Newhouse run of graduates I'm having on here. Jesse Doherty a few weeks ago, and now you. Finally getting my grad school represented on here as well. When did you?
Yeah, go Orange.
Yeah, when were you at Syracuse? Refreshing my memory.
2012 to 13 was my master's program there. I'm a proud undergraduate of Colorado State University, who admittedly has my heart in a way that grad school doesn't. But I enjoyed my time there.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, I grad school at Syracuse, but St. Bonaventure is still where I went to college, and grad school is just kind of a grad school thing. What was you were only there for a year for the master's program, but I'm guessing talk a little bit about, what talks about your experience at Syracuse and kind of what having a Newhouse master's degree and that Newhouse experience mean. What did that give your career? What does that give in your writing, your reporting? How did you benefit from that, do you think?
Mm-hmm. Well, I came from it a little bit late. I didn't get into journalism until I was in my early 30s. It was something I'd kind of flirted with, but didn't go full in until I went to grad school there. So for me, I had the ability to write a little bit, and I could interview a little bit, but I had never really received any training outside of a class in college back in the day, one or two classes, and maybe some experience on the student newspaper at CSU. So it was an opportunity for me to go in. It's a year-long program. I think it still is just a calendar year. Mm-hmm. And you go in and you're just you're in it. You're just dunked under the water. And you're learning, you're learning and practicing every day. So I think that was part of it, just kind of getting a baptism by fire, so to speak, into the industry. And then also just having a Newhouse degree next to your name lends you some credibility in the industry. I think it definitely has opened doors for me that I wouldn't have had if my name hadn't been, or if the Newhouse name hadn't been right there next to mine. So it was a positive experience, and I really enjoyed my cohort there too. We all keep in touch, so it was nice.
So what did you do before grad school in journalism full time?
All sorts of things. Kind of most notably, I taught for a little bit.
Okay.
I was a history and geography teacher. And then when the economy kind of tanked out, I worked in retail for a while and kind of middle management there, and then decided if I was going to make it into a career, and decided I didn't want to do that, and I wanted to go into a very, stable and lucrative industry like journalism.
I mean, yeah. When teaching doesn't look as solid as your current profession, it's interesting. What grade did you teach when you taught history and geography?
8th and 9th graders. Because again, I really like to make it easy on myself.
As I say, I have one of my dear friends is a high school in 9th grade history teacher, and God bless you guys, because oh my goodness. So did you always write?
I only lasted a couple of years, so that was as much as I could do. So, kudos to people who can stay in there.
So in a weird way, does that experience that you have kind of outside of for sports journalism and now being a GA writer, how much does that influence you at all now as a reporter, do you think?
I think so. I think honestly, in any line of work that you do, I think diverse life experiences help. Mm-hmm. There is a part of me that wish I'd gotten into it, when I was 18 and starting college, and just went, wrote on the paper for all 4 years of undergrad, went right into a full-time reporting job after that. And, there's a part of me that wishes I had done that. On the other hand, though, I think having some more diverse life experiences really helps when you bring it into the newsroom, because you haven't been stuck in there your entire life, your entire adult life. So it does give you some perspective. So I have to think, I don't know if there's like a specific way I see it influencing how I work here. Other than like sometimes the contacts come in handy, frankly, like just people who I knew in other kind of walks of life. But I'm sure it makes its way into my coverage all the time.
Excellent. And so before we kind of get more into the weeds of journalism and our writing conversation, we were talking before we hit record that being in Seattle, this is kind of a requirement, but you are a craft beer guy.
Yeah, it's a good beer scene out in Seattle. I grew up in Denver.
Which is a great beer scene as well.
Which is probably, I'm biased, but probably the best beer scene in the country. I think Seattle's probably not far behind. I used to live in the Ballard neighborhood, and it seemed like you couldn't swing a cat without hitting like a new brewery that was going up every week, and they were all good. You know, there's almost too many to get to because you couldn't get through them all. So, yeah, it's a great town for beer and other things.
So do you have any recommendations? I mean, maybe not some that may transfer out across the country, or maybe some that like you go to Seattle, you're out on the West Coast, and make sure you look for this.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll give a shout out to Reuben's Brews. Reuben's is a Ballard brewery. I think they might be starting to distribute outside of Washington. So maybe this is something that will come, that you'll see. If not yet, then they're already on their way to doing that, because they do really, really good beers. My kind of test of a brewery is to go order like a sample of the a taster of the Pilsner.
Okay.
Because I don't love Pilsners, but they're so easy to make sort of bland and terrible and not taste like anything, that if you go one and you have one and it's clear that they've taken some care with it and it's good, that's a good indication. It's like a good like canary in the coal mine that they do good work. So Reuben's has a great Pilsner, but the one that I have been really obsessed with recently is their roasted rye IPA, which has been like my beer of the winter. It is outstanding. If you have a chance to get that, don't pass it up.
Excellent. And interesting the Pilsner test, because obviously West Coast is such an IPA kind of heavy style out there. But yeah, it's an interesting idea that if they can do the Pilsner, they're going to do everything well.
What's so much more subtle than, anybody can do an IPA and just kind of pack it so full of hops that somebody's going to, be attracted to it, just, even if it's like a dare, which some of the IPAs I've had here feel like that, frankly.
Right.
But the Pilsner is so much more subtle that, you have to get somebody who I think knows what they're doing to make a Pilsner that's interesting, at least to me.
Yeah, and I can recommend, if they just started kind of distributing around Western New York here, but Big Ditch Brewing out of Buffalo, they do a great IPA. They do a great kind of a golden ale, which is again another it is the nice, good, easy drinking beer. And again, you can tell so many of these craft breweries, you can tell they really care about this stuff, and they really care about making a good quality product, and it's kind of refreshing to kind of have that available. So, like I said, if you're ever on the East Coast, I would recommend Big Ditch out of Buffalo. So,
well, I'll be back to Syracuse before too long here, so I'll have to maybe look it up.
Excellent. So, we could talk about beer all day, and that would be fine too. But we should also talk about writing a bit. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on this week, this is obviously the week. This is obviously Super Bowl week. The Patriots Eagles is coming up in a few days as we're recording this, and I wanted to talk to somebody who's covered a Super Bowl. And luck would have it, you've covered a Super Bowl.
I have indeed.
So you were at Super Bowl 49, which was the Seahawks Patriots game from a few years ago. And we'll dig down into kind of the whole process, but kind of just overview, general question. I mean, what's it like to cover a Super Bowl?
It's a lot. There's just a lot going on all the time. It's a ton of work. And I don't know if it's not a great place for journalism. Let me say that. It's everybody writing variations of the same story. And, if you come out of there with a somewhat unique angle, that is, you've done exemplary work, to be original. but there are so many people there who, aren't sports journalists, and they're just doing it for sort of like you go to media night or media day, media night, opening night, whatever they're calling it now, and who aren't there for a story or even to like mine for anything. They're just there to sort of make a spectacle and play up kind of the hype of the event. And there's a lot of things like that. There's parties everywhere, and you want to kind of try to see if you can have like a unique angle and go into one of these things and actually report it. You end up just going to the party and like checking it out and just being like, well, okay, I guess there were a bunch of famous people there. But it's the same thing anybody else is doing. So you also don't get a lot of access to the team. You don't get any access to the practices. You have a pool reporter doing the actual practice reports. And when you get the team, there's so many people there at the different tables at the team events. It's just hard to have like any kind of meaningful insight because you're always arm wrestling, with other reporters to even get like a question in.
Right.
So it's much harder, I think, to come up with good material during Super Bowl week than it is on a random like regular season week where you can hang out in the locker room and get the player you want to get and things like that. So it's interesting.
I was gonna say it's a lot is like the perfect description I think for Super Bowl. Like the whole reporting it, the whole thing is just it's a lot. It feels like a lot from a distance. So were you refresh my memory, were you the day-to-day beat writer at the time for the Seahawks that year?
Yeah, okay. I was. That was my first full-time year covering the Seahawks. And it was also the year of the I'm just here so I don't get fined.
That's
Marshawn Lynch year. Yeah. So there was a lot going on.
Right. So I guess kind of walk me through the whole process. So the Seahawks win the NFC title game. They're going back to the Super Bowl. And there's always that 2-week gap between the championship game and then the Super Bowl. So kind of walk me through what that like initial week and planning is like, and how much and what you're doing to kind of get ready for the actual Super Bowl.
Let me double check that was actually a 2-week gap because I don't remember off the top of my head if it was. Let me just double check here. Because sometimes, for a few years there, they had that 1 week going on there, which was, this was a 2-week one. Okay, cool. All right, so they beat the Packers in this crazy come from behind overtime.
Oh, that's right. That's the onside, the botched onside kick game. That's right.
Right. Yeah. So it was this wild, like, emotional high, and they'd won the Super Bowl the year before, and so it was, I don't know. I don't recall. I didn't do any of the logistical stuff. I left that all to my coworker to sort of figure out where we were going to stay and how we were going to get there and all that stuff. And we're a Hearst company, so like all your travel stuff has to go through corporate and get approved and all that. And it's just you got to take care of that stuff. At the same time, you're coming up with your ideas for stories. And we played it, I think, pretty down the middle. We were a really, really small staff here, and so. I was the only person writing about Seahawks full time. And it was like, okay, we're going to have our daily updates. We're going to have our sort of going back to the Super Bowl stories. We're going to have, the stories on the guys who were new to the team that year who hadn't been through it. We're going to have sort of like the playing up the idea of like, is this a dynasty coming? Because, they were coming off of a Super Bowl win. So it was pretty obvious storylines that we were kind of discussing and planning out. But, for me, too, because I had no idea what I was walking into. A lot of that stuff, as soon as I hit the ground in Phoenix, was just like, oh, that's out the window.
Okay.
Because so much of your so much access is restricted. You really don't get a lot of time with the teams, and there's oftentimes like pooled transportation. So you're thrown on a bus. With a bunch of other surly reporters to go right from the hotel where the Seahawks are staying, and so it's like you don't have the freedom of like, hopping in my car and driving to go interview somebody at a place. There's all these logistical things that get in the way, which I didn't know about heading into it. And I wish I'd sort of had a better idea because I think I would have pared down my expectations. We also took an unusual step because there were 4 of us going, and we wanted to save the company a little bit of money. So instead of staying in the media hotel, which was outrageously expensive, we found a house, like an Airbnb house to rent in Tempe. And so the four of us all stayed together, and that was kind of fun because we did a lot of like, collaborative work that way. And it was 2 photographers and 2 writers, and we could kind of come up with our plans on a day-to-day and head out from there. But if we were doing anything that was one of the official activities, we had to go downtown and meet up with the press pool and then head out to the places. So it's a lot of logistics. Super Bowl week is a lot about logistics.
Okay. And it sounds like very formalized logistics too. Like there's not that kind of not that, a lot of pro sports is free and easy these days, but it seems like it's sounding like it's very regimented in where you can go and how you get there and what to do.
Yep. Yeah, there's not a lot of flexibility because the security, there's such a high security throughout the entire week that there isn't a lot of play that you get. And then, you've got these other events going on throughout the day that for us, we wanted to spend some time sort of like doing stories about the scene and things like that. So we were trying to figure out how we do, cover the media availability in the morning, get up like a quick hitter, and then kind of move on to something in the afternoon or evening, and then have something, another thing overnight. But we were working like, I don't know, 15 to 18 hour days most days, just because there's so much going on all the time. And some of it's like really fun work, right? You're like at these events and you're just kind of, fly on the wall for some of these things and so doing social media and stuff like that. But it's a lot. It's just like I keep coming back to that. But they're long days, and I don't know. I think my advice to anybody who was covering it for the first time would be like not to make any plans and just go there and think on your feet and see what you can come up with, because the logistics stuff is going to get in your way if you don't.
And so I'm wondering, when you land in Arizona and get to like the super, it's a sprawling Super Bowl, but you kind of get to the Super Bowl for the first time. I mean, what do you remember? What stands out? What were your first impressions of you're at this thing? You're at the Super Bowl.
We got there, I think, on Monday night, and Phoenix was dead. There was nothing happening. And we were like, oh, we got here too early. So we went out for dinner that night. There was just nobody downtown. And then I found out that nobody hangs out in downtown Phoenix, actually. So that was our first mistake, was hanging out in downtown Phoenix. We should have gone to Tempe or what's the other, the Scottsdale or something like that, where people actually hang out. But then it was by Wednesday, all of a sudden everybody was there.
Okay.
And it just got crazy. So we had, I believe, the media day was on Tuesday or Wednesday. I can't remember, but I was on Marshawn Lynch watch, and I just remember the crush of people trying to get in front of him, and I remember being 2 feet from him when he said all the famous lines that became sort of his catchphrases later on, and it was. I think when I think about what my reaction was, it was just oh my gosh, all these people. There's so many people there. The Seahawks had a rally Saturday morning, I think, at Chase Field where the Diamondbacks play, and I don't know, thousands of Seahawks fans showed up to it, and I took the light rail in downtown because I was going to be covering it starting that morning, and for the last 5 stops into downtown Phoenix, we couldn't pick up any more passengers because there were so many people on the train. So I can get a little claustrophobic, especially in a train car with strangers, and I was dying to get out of there. And that's when I think about that Super Bowl, I just think of crowds, and I think of being surrounded by so many people all the time and trying to negotiate the crowds. And then at some point it hits you oh, I'm at the Super Bowl. I think that wasn't really until the game, until I got to the game. It was setting up that it became sort of clear to me oh, right, the game. This is a big deal that's going to happen, because beforehand there's just so much else happening and so many people that it's just a scene.
Right. And, I know we've talked about Media Day in the past, but, media, it's obviously, this event unto itself. It's not really like a press conference day. It's like an event. But like you said, you were on, that was the Marshawn Lynch year when he was very famously not talking to reporters, or he was talking to them, but just saying, I'm just here so I don't get fined, or whatever his exact words were.
Yeah.
And you had covered the team and kind of been around him. So, in general, what's media day like, but also for you in that situation? Because you're the guy who's been, you know Marshawn Lynch, you've been covering him, you've been hearing him say this for months now. It wasn't a new thing. So from your perspective as a writer, what was that like?
It was very surreal. It was really, really strange. I remember, we were talking about like the plans and where to go, and it was just a given that I was going to go wherever Marshawn Lynch was, because it had become a national story by then. Mm-hmm. You remember he didn't talk at the media day before, or he did very briefly, and it was actually some like out of town reporters, national reporters, who had first become sort of upset about Marshawn Lynch not talking.
Right.
He, his relationship with us, with the beat reporters, was fine, because we knew he didn't talk, and we just stopped asking him.
Right.
Because we didn't care that much, frankly. Like Marshawn's goofy, and he's come out of his shell in the last few years, and you've been able to see his personality. But we knew his personality. We knew that he was this goofy guy but he hated talking on the record. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't a big deal for us. Then all of a sudden you had a couple of guys come in who tried to talk to him in the locker room, got upset. Now it's a national story. And now all of a sudden, I just know I have to be on Marshawn watch for the entire week. And that's what it was. So it was really strange and surreal. We got some of the first stories up about that, because we were sort of uniquely positioned to have something ready to go on that. We knew kind of the backstory of some of the stuff, and we moved stuff pretty quickly after that initial presser, which I think lasted, how long did it last? Maybe 3 minutes, okay. 4 minutes. But we knew that was going to be the story coming out of it. Whatever he did was going to be the story. I think if you go into media day looking for an actual story, you're in the wrong place. You need to get out of there,
right?
Because it's more about the spectacle. So yeah, it was really surreal. And then it was really weird to have that be the biggest sports story during Super Bowl week, was the fact that Marshawn wouldn't talk. It was a little weird.
So you mentioned when the game started, it kind of hit you, and I'm wondering what. Covering the actual Super Bowl as a game, as an actual football game, and obviously the way this game unfolded turned out to be very special. The way just coming down to the end and the play call. So what's game day like at the Super Bowl in covering it, and in this particular one, the way New England won at the end with the interception in the end zone. Kind of walk through what that was like.
Oh, it was so crazy. I had rewritten the top of my gamer already, because people forget that the Seahawks had been, I believe they were ahead for most of that game, and then they had the Patriots. Here, let me just go back to the Super Bowl so not screwing this up. But you had a bunch of. It was a really, really close game, really, really well fought game, and Tom Brady really started to lead the comeback there. They were up by 10. It was 24-14 at the end of the third quarter, and so Tom Brady didn't score that touchdown to make it 24-21 until midway through the fourth.
Right.
And then 2 minutes left in the game, they score that what ends up being the game-winning touchdown to Edelman. So I'd already had this. The Seahawks were ahead for most of the game, and all of a sudden in the fourth quarter, I'm having to be oh gosh, is this going to be a heartbreak story, right? That they're going to lose this comeback because Brady plays out of his mind and leads the Patriots to the win. But then when they're driving down the field, when Jermaine Kearse, this catch is forgotten to him.
Right.
So Jermaine Kearse made this insane catch on his back 2 plays before the pick. and it moved the Seahawks downfield and got them in a position to score. Obviously, they didn't take advantage of. But when that happened, I was like, all of a sudden we're yelling in the press box, and the press box was hilarious because it's like the decorum sort of went away that last drive. Like everybody was just kind of losing their shit, and just kind of enjoying the game. It became a game, and less sort of the spectacle, which was really fun. And so when Jermaine Kearse makes that catch, I start, because you have to do this, right? You start writing the topper as far as like the Seahawks have won back-to-back Super Bowls and that story and the catch that's going to be remembered in Super Bowl history forever, because it would have been, right? That would have been one of the iconic plays in Super Bowl history. And then, Marshawn runs for, I think, 7 yards on that first play, and then the pick happens, and it happened right in the corner of the end zone where the press box was.
Okay.
So it happened right in front of all of us. And I remember screaming, not because I'm a Seahawks fan, because I really didn't care whether they won or lost, frankly. Like, there are guys on the team who I like and respect and enjoy covering, but I really wasn't married to the outcome. But it was just so shocking. It was so surprising. I think I remember standing up and yelling no, but you couldn't hear what I yelled because the entire press box lost its mind. I remember John Clayton sitting behind me and just like going crazy, and all the national guys just losing their collective minds together as that play happened. And then we were kind of all watching the replays, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh no, I need to change my story again. So I like had to do the thing where I basically erased half of the story that I had written, and did this really short 200-word version about the Seahawks losing the Super Bowl on the last-minute interception, hit publish, and then headed down to the locker room, which was wild. They actually let us into the locker room before the players came out to the podiums to do the interviews.
Okay. And
that was a trip because it was devastation and also like disbelief. I remember seeing Bruce Irvin, the linebacker, sitting in full pads in like a folding chair, basically, or a small chair outside his locker, and just staring into the distance. Like you couldn't. I don't know where he was, but he wasn't there. I remember seeing Earl Thomas was facing his locker. He was seated facing his locker, and he didn't move, didn't bat an eyelash, just nothing. I remember seeing Kevin Williams, the defensive tackle, who was a longtime Viking star, who was kind of the veteran addition to that team to try and win his first Super Bowl. I remember he was talking, and I remember having so much respect for the fact that here's a guy who probably more than anybody on the team is hurting right now because it was going to be his chance, his last chance to come away with a Lombardi, and he was answering questions, and he was. Eyes were full of tears, and he was feeling it, but he was also he was a pro about it. Just a lot of, it was a lot of like really vivid memories of that night. I remember we were leaving the press box, and Chrissy Teigen and John Legend walked by, and Chrissy Teigen is a big Seahawks fan because she's from the area here, and she was just so angry. And I remember just being like, "Hey, there's Chrissy Teigen," as I walked by her. And they was like, oh, it's John Legend too, and he's shorter than I thought he was. And then like all of a sudden, like, oh, I got to go back to work now. It was weird. It was a really, really vivid night. I don't think we got to bed. I don't think I got to sleep until like 4 a.m. And that was a crazy one.
And as I say, it sounds like one of the what makes that memorable, just hearing you tell that story, is like after like a week of just like this crush of people and events and kind of logistics and all that. Now all of a sudden you kind of get this like real burst of human emotion, and certainly the way that the game ended has an impact on that. But now it's like all of a sudden all this it becomes super human right at the end there.
It was a real football game, and it was a great game. And I think that was the cool part, is it all came down to like the game was great. And obviously heartbreaking for Seahawks fans who are definitely still not over it. But it was really cool. It was a nice way to end the week with like a game that actually lived up to the billing, and something that kind of cut through all the nonsense there. It was cool.
Yeah. Do you miss sports writing at all?
Yeah, I do. It was funny. This year was a very interesting year for the Seahawks for some pretty obvious reasons, and there's been a huge shakeup since the end of the season here with coaching changes and stuff like that. And it looks like a bunch of longtime guys are going to be potentially on their way out, and so there was just a lot of stuff, and there was times where I missed kind of having a voice in the conversation there. Although I dip my toe in every now and then to help out with stuff, and the guy who followed me here, Michael Sean Dugard, did a really nice job with it. And if anybody's interested in following Seahawks coverage, Michael Sean's doing a great job there. So yeah, there are times, but I think also it was time for like a change and not covering the same team for another year there. I felt like it was time.
What's the best thing you've read lately?
Oh gosh, you're gonna put me on the spot. I've read a bunch of interesting reporting. Let me check out my Slack here because I have a channel where I just send myself articles.
Okay, that's cool.
That need. Oh, you know what? I'll give it to a local journalist here in Seattle, a competitor. How about that?
Okay.
Paige Cornwell did a story for the Seattle Times about consent and the idea of consent and where people first learn about the idea of saying yes or no. This is obviously in the aftermath of, the Me Too movement, so many conversations about consent and what that actually means and how, sex can be used as a weapon sometimes. And anyway, it was just a really interesting article. And I think the thing that she could have done is she could have come at it with like a preset viewpoint and sort of written to the conclusion that she already had in her mind about it. But what she did instead was they crowdsourced the information. So they talked to subscribers for the Times and said, where did you first learn about this this concept? And they broke it down demographically, and they broke down the messaging. And it was this really cool, like open-ended question, I think, that she put out there that then yielded some interesting results. So that was a good piece of just like local journalism that I think was timely and was also done very, very well.
Awesome. That sounds really interesting. I can recommend something on the complete different end of the spectrum. I just finished a novel. It's called The Curious Case of Arthur Pepper's Charms. And it's this novel about an English widower whose wife of 40 years dies, and he finds a charm bracelet when he's cleaning out her stuff. And like each charm has a different story about her life before she met him. And it's like him finding out about his wife and kind of traveling around. And it's the only word I can say with it is just the delightful little book. It is so cute. It was beautifully written and it has a happy ending. It was just nice to read something nice. There's so much great writing and so much important stuff that we're reading that's like, of heavy material. It's just nice to get something delightful every now and then. So
yeah, I'm reading Michael Chabon's latest right now, which is Moonglow. I think it was published last year. That I'm admittedly in the bag for kind of anything that he writes, but it's outstanding.
All right. He's on my list of authors I need to read. Where should I start with him?
Cavalier and Clay.
Okay.
The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay is without a doubt my favorite novel. Okay.
Beautiful. All right, Stephen, if people want to follow your work and follow you, where's the best place to do so?
Well, I wouldn't suggest it, but it's SCohenPI is my Twitter handle.
Okay.
And it's SCOHENPI. All my work is at seattlepi.com, and they can just find me there, by clicking on my byline, and it'll take you to all the ridiculous stuff I do for a living.
Awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
As always, thanks for listening to The Other 51. You can find show notes for this episode and all our episodes at sportsmediaguy.com on the Other 51 tab. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. I can highly recommend Overcast for this. Our theme music is by Ellie Moritz.